Do you have a little child with signs of autism and you're waiting for a diagnosis, or an older child that you're waiting for therapy, for new appointments, for different specialists? It seems like in the autism world, everyone is waiting for something. So today I am joined by Kelsey, and we are going to talk about the top 3 questions we get about autism waitlists. Let's get to it. All right, Kelsey, thanks for joining me again today and gathering our top questions on autism waitlists.
Yeah, I'm excited for this one because it always seems like hurry up and wait in this world, whether you're waiting for an autism diagnosis, whether you have a diagnosis and you're waiting for services, or whether you're just waiting for some type of support. It just always seems to be a waiting game.
Yeah. So we're recording this in January, and it's going to be out in February of 2024. And I just wanted to announce that we have just passed on January 22nd our 5-year Turn Autism Around podcast anniversary, which is so exciting. We've produced every single week without fail a Tuesday episode that has downloaded both in audio, on Apple, Spotify, everywhere you listen to audio podcasts. It's also downloaded on my website, marybarbera.com/podcast, as well as on YouTube. Just the audio version, we have had 1.6 million downloads so far in the 5 years. So it's a lot of work to produce. There's a lot of behind the scenes, but we are proud of the interviews we've done. We're proud of the solo shows and the top 3 questions, whatever we're doing. And we're always looking for your input. So you can always email us and let us know what you like about it. Also, a good review on Apple Podcasts also helps me spread the word. So let your friends and other professionals, other parents know about the Turn Autism Around podcast. Send them one that you think really resonates. So, all right, let's get to the top 3 questions about autism waitlists.
Yes, let's get started. So our first question is, what is an autism waitlist and why are they so long?
Yeah, even before COVID, people were in general telling me that they were waiting for an autism evaluation, for a diagnosis, 9 months to 2 years. That was kind of what I was hearing across the board, across the United States. And we also have listeners and course students from all over the world, over 100 countries that we know of. And, they're waiting too. And their wait lists are even more extreme in some cases. Like we had a woman in the UK pretty early on in our toddler course, and she didn't have a diagnosis. She was waiting 18 months just for a speech therapy evaluation. She managed to take the course and really turn things around, and she ended up, I think, canceling that appointment. But a wait list is just that. It's a wait list to get into a physician, a developmental pediatrician, psychiatrist, psychologist, neurologist for an evaluation. There's wait lists, like I said, for speech therapy evaluations. There's wait lists for OT evaluations, ABA evaluations to see. And then once you get the evaluation, that doesn't mean like the gates are going to open once you get a diagnosis. Then you almost have to get back in line for speech therapy weekly or ABA therapy for 20 hours a week. Like just because you had the evaluation and your insurance covers or there's availability, there's wait lists, depending on where you live. Like people, the ABA agency, for instance, might not have a therapist that's willing to drive 45 minutes. So in general, it could be after school, you want additional OT or you want after school therapy. There could be wait lists for that. And so, but even outside of the autism world, like I'm a registered nurse and, a behavior analyst, and I'm also, just a lay person where my doctor has now just decided to move after 5 years with her. I have to get a new, family practice doctor or internal medicine doctor. It's hard to, just slide in and call and get in. Like there's wait lists for it. It seems like everywhere. And Kelsey, you're in Canada. The wait lists for everything must be bad there too, right?
Yeah, well, for autism diagnosis, it's insanity. I mean, we have a public system and a private system, and the public system is over 2 years of wait lists, especially if you're older than 5 or 6. And your autism funding actually cuts off pretty significantly at 6. So it's really important. So even if you get on a wait list at 4, you might lose 2 years of funding. And there are also wait lists to get in to see a pediatrician to even get on that wait list. I mean, it is just, and we asked, why are these wait lists so long? And it's the sheer numbers of people who need services, of kids who are struggling and of families who are struggling. And there's in
Right.
Canada specifically, in a public system, there's not enough providers. I mean, you interviewed Dr. Cheryl Tierney, I think, who talked about the crazy low levels of developmental pediatricians in the U.S. Or was it all around the world?
It was like a few hundred all around the country. I was like, what? I forget what the number was, but yeah, Dr. Cheryl Tierney is a good episode. We can link that in the show notes. And then also, like, why are the numbers so bad? Well, if you think back when Lucas was diagnosed in 1999, the autism rate was 1 in 500, and now it's 1 in 36. Additionally, 1 in every 6 children have some kind of developmental disorder by age 8, like whether that's autism, ADHD, learning disabilities. Those are the highest, but other things. And so kids with ADHD also may need speech therapy, OT, and so it's psychiatry in general across the United States is really hard to get into, hard to get treatment, psychologists, psychiatrists, if you're, have more language and need more counseling, that's always a problem as well. So I think it's a crisis in the United States, in Canada, all over the world. Wait lists are a problem. And then in the autism world specifically, and really every study shows that the earlier you intervene, the better. And the more intensively early on, can really make a huge difference. Hey, it's Mary, and I'm breaking in real quick to ask you a question. Are you struggling with tantrums or other problem behavior? I want to tell you real quick about our course, Turn Tantrums Around. It's a mini course. It is broken up with videos embedded in 6 easy lessons, and in under 2 hours, you can complete this mini course and learn proven child-friendly strategies that can help prevent and possibly even eliminate tantrums now and new problem behaviors that creep up in the future. Go to turntantrumsaround.com and use the coupon code podcast to get $10 off the already reduced price. Now let's get back to the show.
It's tricky, and the systemic issues of of getting enough providers, and then some lower level ABA therapists don't make a lot of money, so it's hard to keep people in the field. And the more we don't prioritize and really fund the professions that we need helping these kids it's just going to get worse, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But
All
that
right,
can bring
I'm
us to
getting
our next
depressed.
question.
Let's move on to number 2.
I know. Well, that's what I said. But there's good news because there is lots of help out there. So what can I do while I'm on a wait list for a diagnosis or services?
Yeah. So I know I've talked about this before, but you might just be listening or watching for the first time or haven't watched everything. So one of the things you can do, especially with a young child, if you have a young child that's not in school yet and you're in the United States, you should definitely be able to qualify for birth to 3 evaluations and services for free, or in some states, there is a sliding scale, very low cost. Same for 3 to 5, ages 3 to 5. So before you start school, you should be able to get speech therapy evaluations, multidisciplinary evaluations. Psychologists can look at them. They can evaluate them, diagnose with autism or something else. So, in general, just search birth to 3 evaluations and your city and your state and try to find out who to call, or ask your pediatrician or ask your childcare provider. They usually know because a lot of kids need evaluations and services. So that's one thing you can do. The next thing you can do, probably my preference would be, my first thing is to learn more, to get the Turn Autism Around book, especially if you're young. But there are really important chapters in here to help older kids who are still struggling with talking, tantrums, picky eating, sleeping, potty training, that sort of thing. So learn more, get the book, and don't just get the book, read the book. You could join our online courses. You could take the mini courses, there's just a lot you can do. But it's important not to overwhelm yourself. About half the people in our toddler course do not even have a diagnosis of autism at this point, at the point that they join, when they introduce themselves. So there's no point. Like, my big thing is, like, if I was talking to myself back in the late 1990s when Lucas started showing signs, is don't wait, don't get in denial, don't wait, let it all to the professionals, don't do 1 hour of speech a week or every other week. No, need to learn more, dive in. But you don't have to go crazy. Like, we know you have a life and you probably have a job and other kids and whatever. So don't throw yourself overboard. Let's just be calm. Let's keep the appointment, get the appointment. You might want to get on a couple different wait lists. My area, I am close to Children's Hospital of Philadelphia and Hershey, for instance. So I would recommend, if somebody were living near me, to fill out the application or the forms to get a developmental pediatrician evaluation at both the places. And then once the one place comes and says, okay, you can have an appointment, then you can cancel the other one, if it's equal driving distance and that sort of thing. And a lot of times just going with a psychologist evaluation and diagnosis can get you started with other treatment too.
Yeah. And I think that's so important. I think the best thing you can do when you are on waitlist is not just sit on the waitlist. And getting knowledge by taking, something like Mary's online courses, that really changed things for me personally. I felt so much better, and I felt like I didn't have to stick with poor therapy or wait for therapy that might not work for my son just because that's what was available. And also, the other thing you can do while you're on a wait list is you might not be able to pay for for private ABA or private speech therapy while you're waiting for these, more cost-effective or funded options. You could hire an SLP online or a behavior analyst online and get them to train you a little bit more so that you or your nanny or family or caregiver, whoever's with the child, you can then train them to do a little bit here and there, so that nobody is just
Yeah.
getting
Speaking of
stuff.
which, we have, it seems like an influx. We've always had grandmothers in our
Mhm.
courses, but it
Yeah.
seems like lately, grandmothers are coming in a lot, taking the course, working with their grandchildren. Like it doesn't have to be a high-priced nanny. It could be a mommy's helper. It could be an older sibling. It could be a grandmother, a church volunteer. These techniques, at least the techniques we teach, are very easy to learn, child-friendly, that really from, 14-year-olds to 80-year-olds can learn these things.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really true. There's lots of options. So definitely you don't need to sit on the wait list. There's always alternative options while you wait.
But don't
Or-
cancel your appointment.
yes.
That's the other thing. Get the appointment and then start learning and start doing. And in some cases, maybe you can turn things completely around and maybe you will eventually cancel the appointments. But, get the appointments, keep the appointments, and start working and roll up your sleeves and really get to work.
Yeah, and if you're someone listening who's wondering, I don't know if my child has autism, should I just get on a wait list
And get the book and start the
get the
process of
book and
learning.
start learning.
Because this, 1 in 6 actually ends up with autism, ADHD, learning disabilities. Like these techniques aren't going to hurt. Any of that. It's not going to hurt if they end up being gifted or they end up being typically developing Joe Normal. It's not going to hurt to learn techniques to just get better cooperation and less tantrums when you're going to the doctors. There's just so much you can do.
All right. Our last question is one we hear often in our courses. I have therapy in place. Child is in therapy, but I'm not happy with it. But everywhere else has wait lists, so I feel stuck. Should I stay in the therapy or leave?
Yeah. And I am a big proponent. I'm a behavior analyst. I'm a registered nurse. I have a PhD. Like I'm a big proponent in finding local people to help you. Online people, local people. So I am very strong in saying don't fire everybody and have nothing, right? But you do need to work with the people, learn more yourself so you can, in the book, I talk a lot about become the captain of the ship because you have the most motivation, you have the most to gain or lose if, your child isn't potty trained by school age, or you have the most to lose or gain if you can't go out to restaurants and you can't go on a plane because of, your child's problem behaviors and that sort of thing. So I really want the professionals working with your child, and I don't care if they're SLPs, OTs, ABA therapists, whoever. I want them to be positive, child-friendly. I want them to be open to working with you, like Kelsey in podcast 3, and we can link that in the show notes. Well, you tell the story, Kels.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, Mary, that things might not always be perfect, but if you have the right people, there's opportunity for growth in everybody. These people in helping professions want to help. They're not there because they just like children. And so I tried really hard. Brentley was in a program that was, making his problem behavior worse. He was running in streets. I think there was something in his behavior plan about how he couldn't work beside a window because he tried to jump out said window. I mean, just crazy things that wouldn't have needed to be in the behavior plan if these people knew some more positive preventative strategies. And I had just taken Mary's courses. I was starting things at home and saw that the things they were writing, having trouble with, I was having success with at home. So I thought, great, I'm going to bring them this information. They're going to be so happy and they're going to implement it all. I got kicked out. I got told I asked to watch, which was great. They let me watch. If you have a provider that doesn't let you watch, that's troubling. They did let me watch. I took notes. They didn't like that. They said that made people feel uncomfortable. Whatever. I went and I said, okay, we could work on this and this and this, and could we try this? And, for a week or two, I think they did try, and then they were kind of like, you know, no, it all kind of fell apart, and it just wasn't the right group of people. I have since worked with providers who will listen to me and I'll say, I know that research says this method might work, but this is not working. We're seeing this, I'm seeing this. Could we try this? And they say yes. And I think there's always people out there who are willing to work with you. And,
Right.
as long as you have providers who are willing to listen to you and willing to take your family values into account and willing to see when something that's always worked for them is not working and pivot, then you're okay.
Mhm. Yeah, and
Alternatively, if you're in a place where they're not listening to you, they won't let you see, they're like, well, we're going to keep having Johnny cry on the floor because we've done this for 20 years and it'll eventually work. You know,
right.
that
And he
might not
was
be
banging his head on hard surfaces up to 100
Yep.
times a day, and he was eloping from the clinic and running down the street. And they literally would not listen to Kelsey. They
No.
said she couldn't come back to observe anymore. And at that point, it's like, even though insurance is paying, it's not free.
Yeah.
Kelsey had to drive an hour each way there.
Mhm.
It was Brentley's precious time when he was 2.5, when his brain cells were going to, go one way or the other. I mean, if you keep hitting your head on hard surfaces 100 times a day, or you start learning to request and think they were working on colors, they should have been working on Mandy. There was so many things wrong. I mean, I never saw the place. And like Kelsey said, these are probably well-meaning people. They're not malicious. They just are stuck in their ways. So yes, sometimes you do have to pull out. Sometimes you have to leave, even if it's hard. And you need to get in another wait list, learn yourself, learn. We do have a really good podcast, how to know if a school and home program are going to be good. So we can link that in the show notes. Really eyes wide open. Like, you want to see any program that they're suggesting. You want to, if you get an ABA provider or whatever, you want to see, are you familiar with Mary Barbera's approach? Are you familiar with her books, her courses? Like, BCBAs can take my courses, and anybody, professionals, they can get credits, like, there is a way to make everything a lot more positive, and child friendly, if that's not what's going on. So although I'm very pro finding local people and not like kicking people out, finding where they're, I think I did an interview with Emily a few months ago. We can link that in the show notes. She was saying that the speech pathologist really wasn't adding anything. And so I gave her some ideas, and she was able to like utilize the SLP and bring her on board to help with articulation and to really teach her some of these ways. So yeah, there's just so much you can do on the wait list. And don't ever, if you're in a situation where your child is not safe, and the drive and the costs and the inconvenience, and if they're not safe, then you have to pull them, or you have to make a change. Like, you got to do something, but don't just pull them. Like, if you're in the United States, there's calling an IEP, and we've done other shows with IEP advocates and that sort of thing. Just don't pull them and homeschool them on your own, because school is required to provide a free, appropriate public education. And even if that's outside of the public education realm, if they can't do it safely and correctly with appropriate progress, then another option may be appropriate.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's good. And make sure, if you're listening to this podcast and you're one of these people on wait lists or in therapy that's not, make sure to reach out to us. Take a free workshop, email us at info@marybarbera.com, and we can get you in touch with resources that can support you.
Right. And you don't have to, we have a lot of free resources. We have now 2 mini courses with really a fraction of the investment to dip your toe in the water. We have 5 days to more talking mini course, and we also have turn tantrums around mini course. So you might not be ready for the whole course and community. Get one of these mini courses and you can start to see progress. And once you start to see progress, everything gets better. I promise.
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week, next time, same place. If you're a subscriber, I would love a review on Apple Podcasts or anywhere you're listening. Thanks again, and see you next time.